Hi guys, I hope you're all well. So today we are going to talk about completing the square. Going to talk about completing the square. So let's basically write it completing. So we are going to talk about the method of completing the square. So this is maths for grade 10, also grade 11. This method is also used, and also grade 12. This method is also used. So what is completing the square? So basically completing the square is just a method of solving for x. So basically here we are solving for x. So it's a method that is mainly, the main aim of it is to reduce, or rather to transform a quadratic equation where the main aim is to transform a quadratic equation from the form of ax squared plus bx plus c into a form of x plus p to say squared plus q. So the main aim of completing the square is to transform a quadratic equation from this format to this form. So that is basically completing the square. So how to use completing the square, or rather what are the main methods of completing the square? Since now we know that the main aim is to transform, or rather to change your standard equation of ax squared plus bx plus c. So the main aim is to change this standard equation into being ax plus p squared plus q. So I forgot a here. So since now we know that we want to change a quadratic equation from this form to this form, what are the necessary steps that you must follow to complete your square, to change it into this form? So the first step is to write down. So the first step is to write the equation in a standard form. So that is the first step, is to write your equation in its own standard form, in a standard form. And what is the standard form of your equation? A standard form of your equation is ax squared plus bx plus c. This is a standard form of your equation, whereby your a is a coefficient, b is also a coefficient, and c is also your coefficient of, or here, this one is a coefficient of x squared, and this one is a coefficient of x, and this one is just a coefficient standing on its own. So the first step that you do is you write it down, your equation, in a standard form, and the standard form, it is this form that we just hold. Then the second step is that you must make the coefficient of x squared to be 1. So you must make the coefficient of x squared to be 1. That is the second thing, is you must always have the coefficient of x squared, which is a. The coefficient of x squared, which is a, you must make the coefficient of x squared to be 1. So how do you make the coefficient of x squared to be 1? You make it by dividing the entire equation, or the whole equation, by dividing the entire equation by 1. So that's how you make your coefficient of x squared to be 1. You divide the entire equation by 1. That's how you make the coefficient of x squared to be 1. And then the third step says that you take half. So the third step is, now you take the half of the equation, half of the coefficient, So you take the half of coefficient of x term. Then, so the third step, that you take the half of the coefficient of x. So the coefficient of x, you multiply it by half, and then after multiplying by half, then you square it. Then you square it, and then after square it, you then add. Then you add and you subtract. You subtract it from the equation. So with the same equation that you now have, the same bracket that you now have, you add, you subtract it, so that the reason that you subtract it, guys, is so that you didn't change the whole equation, so that the equation remains correct. The first step that you do here is that you take your coefficient of x, you multiply it by half, and then after multiplying it by half, then you square it. Then after squaring that expression, or that expression, you just put it inside of your bracket, then you square it, and then after squaring it, then you add with the same thing, and you subtract it from the equation. It's either you add it or rather you subtract it from the equation. So it'll be more clear when we do an exercise, but just bear with me and write down these tips, and then you subtract it from the equation, so that the equation is correct, or rather mathematically correct. So the main aim to add it, or rather to subtract it, is because you don't want to change the mathematical expression that you will have been given at the time. So you add it and subtract it at the same time, because of you add it and subtract it at the same time because of you don't want to change the whole equation. Once you add something and subtract it, the same thing, automatically you get 0, and that simply means that you didn't do anything to that equation. You add it and you subtract it, automatically you get 0. That simply means you do not change, you haven't changed the whole expression of that equation. So the reason for adding and subtracting it is because of we don't want to change the equation or the correctness of the equation. And the fourth step says that now you write the left hand, you write, or rather you work out the left hand, because of all along, guys, we will have been dealing with the left hand. Because of the right hand, remember, because of we are trying to solve for x, so the right hand will automatically be 0. So we are dealing with the left hand here. We're dealing with the left hand. So write down the left side as a difference of 2 squares. Okay, so now the part whereby you write it as difference of 2 squares, you will see it, because of now you will be having an expression, a trinomial expression, and then when you factorize that expression, automatically you will get a difference of 2 squares. You will factorize it, and then you'll get 2 brackets of the same thing inside, and you do it of the same thing inside, but the only difference now, it will be what? It will be it will be the signs. So that's why it's you factorize it, and then it will form a difference of 2 squares. And then after factorizing, you factorize your equations, and then afterwards here, guys, you factorize your equation, because of now you'll be having a difference of 2 squares. After having a difference of 2 squares, you factorize the equation. You factorize the equation in terms of difference of squares. So you will be after you write down the difference of 2 squares, and then you factorize your expression. After factorizing your expression, after factorizing your equations in terms of the difference of 2 squares, you after factorizing it, and then you solve for x. So these are basically methods of completing. These are basically the methods of completing the square. So let's just take a look at a quick example. Okay, so the example says that you have your expression, you have x squared minus 10x minus 11. So remember, the first thing it is that you write the equation in a standard form, so it will be equals to 0. Therefore, it is in a standard form. Why? Because of it follows a trend of x squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0. So therefore, it is in a standard form. Secondly, after here, what you do is that you do what? You make sure that your value of a consists of a coefficient of 1. So therefore, since our a consists of a coefficient of 1, therefore we are on the right track. And then after here, what you do is you take your value of b, and then you multiply it. So because of here it was minus, therefore you take your value of b, here it will be plus. You take your value of b, which is 10, you multiply it by half, and then you square it, as the statement says. You take your value, so you take half of the coefficient of x, then you square it. You multiply it by half, and then you square it. Then you add and subtract it. So that's what we are doing now. We took our value of b, which was 10. So we took our 10, we multiplied by half, then we square it. Then you add and subtract the same thing. So plus 10 times 1 over 2. Because of here you were adding it, here you are going to subtract it, minus 1 over 2, and then minus 11, that is already here. And then from here, guys, you just put it in, punch it inside of a calculator. You take it, the half of 10 is 5, and then 5 squared is 25. And then the half of 10 is 10, the half of 10 is 5, then 5 squared is 5 is 25. So it's going to be plus 25 and then minus 25. And then you're going to have also minus 11 equal to 0. So guys, when you check, you have plus 25 and minus 25. That simply means that you did not change the entire equation. The entire equation is still the same as this one. Hence why we were saying that you add and then you subtract your expression that you multiplied with half and squared it. That's why you were what? That's why you were adding it and then you are subtracting it, because of once it's 25 minus 25, automatically you go back to your original equation, and therefore you did not change the correctness of your expression. And then from here we apply these steps now that says that, okay, write down on the left side as a difference of 2 squares. So the left side, it is this side, so you write it as a difference of 2 squares. So it will be x minus 5, then minus 5, because of 5 times 5 is 25, and then minus 5 it is minus 10. So therefore this one is what is correct. It is a difference of 2 squares. Okay, everything is the same. And then minus 25 minus 25 minus 11 is minus 36 is equals to 0. And then from here, because of it's the same bracket, guys, it's the same bracket, you can say x minus 5 to the power of 2 minus 36 is equals to 0. And then, guys, we would have answered our question there, because of our main aim was to transform this form into this form, which was plus p squared plus q. So our main aim, we are now finished from here. But from here, since we wanted to find the value of x, from here what you do is you just solve for x. So it is x minus 5, so you can just take 36 to the other side, it becomes positive 36, and then you put the square root, and therefore you get that plus minus 6 is equals to x minus 5, and then your x is going to be plus minus 6 plus 5. So this is your final answer of the whole thing.